I can restart a human heart in under 60 seconds, but I haven't been able to finish a single sentence of my daughter's favorite story in 3 years. Every time I try, I see Janet Jones standing at the fence, and the words just die in my throat. I thought I was protecting my daughter, Cassandra, from the pain, but I didn't realize that my silence was actually the thing that was breaking her. For 1,095 days, I've navigated my neighborhood like a minefield, dodging Janet because she carries the exact same auburn light in her hair that my wife did. I treated her like a stranger, but she was the only one who held the key to my daughter's future. When Cassandra's teacher called me about a failing grade, I realized my protection was actually a prison. But here's what makes this story different. Because I spent my career dealing with emergencies, with life and death decisions made in seconds, and yet I couldn't see the slow emergency happening right in front of me. This is a story about a library's secrets, a 6 a.m. emergency, and the moment I finally had to answer the question that changed everything. Why do you keep avoiding me? And what Janet revealed in response. It shattered every assumption I'd built my walls upon. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel, and it reminds us that hope and second chances are universal languages. My name is Chris Hundley. I save lives for a living, but I couldn't save my own. Every morning starts the same way. 5:47 a.m. Coffee brewing. Cassandra's lunch packed the night before, because I learned early that grief makes you forget the small things. And then the window check. I pull back the kitchen curtain, exactly 2 inches, just enough to see if Janet's car is in her driveway. If it is, I know she's home. If she's home, there's a 73% chance she'll be in her garden by 6:15. And if she's in her garden, I'll see her do that thing, that unbearable thing where she tucks her auburn hair behind her left ear. Sarah used to do that exact same movement. Same hair, same gesture, different woman. So I plan my departures like military operations. Because I'm a professional, you see, I've triaged gunshot wounds while maintaining calm. I've held the hands of dying patients while calling their families. But I will not, handle a 3-second wave exchange with my neighbor. The detour adds 20 minutes to my commute. 20 minutes of driving past the elementary school where Sarah used to volunteer. Past the coffee shop where we had our first date. Past the park where we learned Cassandra was coming into our lives. You'd think a longer route would give me more time to think. It doesn't. It gives me more time to not think, which is precisely the point. Dad, why do we always go this way? Cassandra asked once, 3 months after the funeral. She was 6 then, smart enough to notice patterns. Too young to understand why patterns become survival mechanisms. Traffic. I lied. Always terrible on Maple Street. She accepted it because children accept what their parents tell them. They trust us. And I use that trust to build a fortress of avoidance. Brick by brick, lie by lie. But here's the thing about avoidance. It's exhausting. It takes more energy to dodge someone than to simply exist in the same space. I know this. Psychologically, I understand it. Yet understanding something and changing it are separated by a canyon of grief I hadn't figured out how to cross. The day everything changed started like any other Tuesday. Window check. Janet's car, present. Adjusted departure time. 5:52 instead of 6:05. Success rate of avoiding neighbor contact. Maintained at 94%. What I didn't account for was the mail. Janet was already outside, and I committed to my exit. Reversing course would be obvious. So I made a choice. I'd power walk to my car with my head down, briefcase up, Universal signal for too busy to chat. 3 steps from my door, I heard it. "Morning, Chris." Her voice was kind, not pushy, not demanding, just present. And that presence felt like an accusation I hadn't earned but couldn't escape. I mumbled something. Could have been morning or, yeah, or just a grunt. Honestly, I don't remember because I was too focused on not looking at her hair, not seeing Sarah, not breaking down in my driveway before a 12-hour shift. But as I pulled away, I saw something in my rear-view mirror that I couldn't ignore. Janet wasn't hurt or offended. She looked sad, not for herself, for me, and that realization followed me all the way to the hospital because it meant she understood something I'd been trying to hide. She knew I was avoiding her. Worse, she knew why. The call came on a Wednesday. Cassandra's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, with that voice educators use when they're about to deliver bad news wrapped in concern. "Mr. Hundley, I need to discuss Cassandra's literacy project. My daughter was failing, not struggling, failing. The girl who used to beg Sarah for one more chapter every night was now avoiding books entirely. And I, the father who'd been so focused on avoiding painful triggers, had completely missed it. She needs to complete a reading journal," Mrs. Patterson explained. 20 entries by the end of the month. She hasn't submitted one. I promised to handle it. Added it to my mental list right between pickup prescriptions. And remember to actually sleep. But when I got home that night, exhausted from a shift where we lost 2 patients, I found Cassandra at the kitchen table with that book, The Starkeeper's Daughter. The same book Sarah read to her every night. The book I hadn't touched since the funeral. "I can't do it without Mom," Cassandra whispered. 8 years old and already learning that some absences are permanent. What kills me, what truly destroys me, is that I couldn't help her. Standing there in my scrubs, having just spent hours saving strangers, and I couldn't sit down and read a children's book to my own daughter, because opening that book meant hearing Sarah's voice in my head, and I'd worked so hard to keep that voice buried where it couldn't hurt me. "Tomorrow," I said, "I promise, tomorrow we'll read it together." Tomorrow became next week. Next week became never. But then the books started appearing. First one showed up on a Thursday morning. Where the mountain meets the sky. Cassandra's reading level, public library stamp, and a bookmark with a handwritten note. Chapter 3 has a joke about socks. Worth it. No signature. No explanation. Friday. The Adventures of Captain Whiskers. Bookmark note. The captain reminds me of someone brave I know. Saturday. 3 more books. All age appropriate. All with little notes designed to make reading feel like treasure hunting instead of homework. I knew it was Janet. Had to be. The library stamps confirmed it. She worked there after all. What I couldn't figure out was why. Why invest this effort in a neighbor who wouldn't even make eye contact? Why care about a child she'd never had a real conversation with? Sunday evening, I cracked, marched across the lawn to her fence with a stack of books in my arms and 3 years of frustration in my chest. She was in her garden. Of course she was. Auburn hair catching the sunset, hands in the soil, and when she looked up at me, there was no surprise in her eyes. She'd been waiting. "I don't need your charity," I said. Professional, controlled, every word measured to keep emotion out of it. Janet stood slowly, wiped her hands on her jeans, and walked the fence. "It's not charity, Chris." "Then what is it?" Because from where I'm standing, it looks like pity. "It's books," she said simply. "Books that might help a little girl who's struggling. Cassandra is fine." "Is she?" The question wasn't aggressive. It was genuine, and that made it worse. Because I see her sitting on your porch sometimes, staring at nothing. I see her walk to the bus stop alone, while you check the windows to make sure I'm not outside. I see a child who lost a mother and is now losing her father to grief. The words hit like a punch. I wanted to yell, to defend myself, to explain that everything I'd done was to protect Cassandra from pain. But Janet wasn't finished. Cassandra isn't failing because she can't read, Chris. Her voice was soft, deliberate. She's failing because she's waiting for you to listen. I left the books on her fence post and walked away. Didn't trust myself to respond, because deep down, in the part of my brain that stays clinical even when my heart is breaking, I knew she was right. That night, I tried to read to Cassandra. Opened The Starkeeper's Daughter to page 1. Got through 3 sentences before my throat closed up, and I had to excuse myself to the bathroom where I sat on the floor and cried for the first time in 8 months. When I came out, Cassandra was asleep on the couch, the book still open on her chest. And on the coffee table, I found another note. This one must have been slipped through our mail slot. You don't have to do this alone, Jay. But I did have to do it alone, because accepting help meant acknowledging I was failing. And acknowledging failure meant facing the truth that my carefully constructed avoidance system was hurting the one person I was trying to protect. 2 days later, everything fell apart. And ironically, it was my job, the one place where I felt in control, that forced my hand. If you are listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I would not even reach 300 subscribers. But I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these tales matter. Please subscribe to this channel by hitting the subscribe button. You can also turn on the notification bell to be updated when a new video is posted. And let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Now let's continue. The text came at 11:47 p.m. Mass casualty incident. Bus versus semi-truck on the interstate. All hands on deck. I looked at Cassandra asleep in her bed. Fever 101.3. Motrin administered at 10 p.m. Next dose due at 2 a.m. My shift wasn't supposed to start until tomorrow afternoon, but when the hospital calls in a crisis, you go. That's the job. That's the oath. I call my usual emergency contacts. My sister in Seattle at a conference. Sarah's parents, too elderly to handle a sick child overnight. The neighbor 2 houses down who sometimes helped, on vacation. The phone tree collapsed. Every option crossed off. Every backup plan failed, which left one choice I'd spent 3 years avoiding. 5:52 a.m. I'm standing on Janet's porch in my scrubs with a half-conscious Cassandra in my arms and desperation in my eyes. Every instinct screaming at me to figure out another solution. But there wasn't one, because sometimes life corners you into the exact confrontation you've been running from. I rang the doorbell, waited, heard footsteps. The door opened. Janet stood there in a robe, hair down, no makeup, looking like she'd been asleep 10 seconds ago. She took one look at us, and her expression shifted from surprise to understanding to immediate action. How high is her fever? First question. Not, what are you doing here? Or, do you know what time it is? Just the practical question a crisis demands. 101.3 at bedtime. She needs Motrin at 2 a.m. I have to. There's been an accident. Mass casualty. I'm sorry, I know we don't. I wouldn't ask if I had any other. Chris. She cut me off gently. Bring her inside. I stepped into Janet's house for the first time. should have felt monumental. Instead, it felt practical, clinical, a problem being solved. Janet directed me to her guest room. I laid Cassandra down, and my daughter barely stirred. Exhaustion and fever keeping her in that space between sleep and awareness. "Motrin is in my bag," I said, already backing toward the door. 2 a.m. And if her fever spikes above 102, there's a pediatrician number on the bottle. I should be back by noon, maybe sooner if... Chris. Janet's voice stopped me at the threshold. "She'll be okay. I promise. Go save some lives." I nodded, turned to leave, got 3 steps down the hallway. That's when I saw it, on Janet's coffee table, under a reading lamp, open to the middle, The Starkeeper's Daughter, first edition, 1987 printing. The exact same book Sarah used to read. Not just the same title, the same rare edition with the original illustrations. The one that cost $80 used because it's been out of print for 15 years. I froze, because that book doesn't just appear on someone's coffee table by coincidence. You've been looking for this. Not a question, a realization. How long? Janet's silence was an answer. "Janet, how long have you been searching for this book?" "For months." Her voice was quiet, honest. I called 17 used bookstores, set up alerts on 6 different websites, finally found it at an estate sale in Pennsylvania, and paid for expedited shipping. My brain couldn't process it. Why? Because Cassandra mentioned it once. 3 months ago, I was getting my mail, and she was on your porch, and she said, "My mom used to read me the best book, but we can't find it anymore." And I thought, her voice caught, I thought maybe if she had it again, maybe it would help. I stared at this woman, this neighbor I'd treated like a ghost, this stranger who'd spent 4 months and God knows how much money tracking down a rare children's book for a little girl she barely knew. "I have to go," I said, because my pager was going off and people were dying, and I couldn't process this moment standing in her hallway at 6 a.m. But as I drove to the hospital, one thought kept circling. Janet hadn't been trying to replace Sarah. She'd been trying to honor her, and I'd been so busy protecting myself from pain that I couldn't see the difference. The shift was brutal. 16 hours, 3 deaths, 5 saves. Somewhere around hour 12, I realized I hadn't checked on Cassandra. Janet had texted updates. Fever down, eating soup, watching cartoons, but I'd been too slammed to respond. When I finally pulled into my driveway at 10 p.m., exhausted and covered in someone else's blood, I saw lights on at Janet's house. Cassandra's laugh floating through an open window. I walked across the lawn, knocked. Janet opened the door, and behind her, I saw my daughter on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, holding that book. "Daddy." Cassandra jumped up. "Miss Janet found Mom's book, the real one, and she's been reading it to me, and I forgot how good it is, and—" "Cassandra," Janet said gently, "why don't you show your dad the drawing you made?" My daughter ran off to grab her artwork, leaving Janet and me standing in the doorway. "Chris, I need to tell you something," Janet said, "and I need you to listen without running away this time." "I'm listening. I know why you avoid me. I've known since the first month you moved in. Your wife, Sarah, we met once, at the library. She was researching grief support groups for children. She told me her cancer was terminal, and she was trying to prepare Cassandra. And she mentioned," Janet's voice trembled, "she mentioned she was worried about you, about how you'd handle things after. She asked me to keep an eye on you both." I promised her I would. The world tilted. You knew Sarah? Not well. One conversation. But she made me promise. And when I saw you avoiding me, I realized why. The hair thing. The mannerisms. I thought about dyeing it, changing how I move, but that felt dishonest. So instead, I just try to help from a distance. The books, the notes. I thought if I could help Cassandra, maybe I was keeping that promise. I couldn't speak, because everything I'd assumed, every wall I'd built, was based on a story I'd written myself. Janet wasn't a painful reminder. She was a lifeline Sarah had left behind. There's more, Janet continued. I lost someone too. My brother. Car accident. 5 years ago. And I know what it's like to see reminders everywhere. To build your life around avoidance. But Chris, here's what I learned. She paused, looked at me with tears in her eyes. You're not protecting Cassandra by hiding from pain. You're teaching her that love means suffering and connection means loss. Is that really what Sarah would want? We talked until 2 a.m., right there on her porch steps while Cassandra slept inside. Janet told me about Marcus, her younger brother, 23 years old, engineering student, killed by a drunk driver 3 blocks from home. How she'd spent a year avoiding that street. How she couldn't listen to the radio station he'd loved. How certain laughs in the crowd would stop her cold because they sounded like him. I get it, she said. The avoidance, the detours, the elaborate systems we build to keep ourselves from falling apart. I did all of it. But you know what I learned? What? Grief doesn't get smaller. We just get bigger around it. We expand to hold both the love and the loss. And that expansion requires letting people in, not keeping them out. I wanted to argue, to defend my approach. But sitting there at 2 a.m., exhausted and raw, I couldn't find the energy for defensive walls. Looking at you hurts. I admitted, your hair, the way you move. It's like seeing Sarah everywhere, and I don't know how to be okay with that. I know, Janet said, and I'm sorry. But Chris, can I tell you what I think Sarah would say if she were here? I nodded, not trusting my voice. I think she'd tell you that similarity isn't replacement, that being reminded of love isn't a betrayal, that teaching Cassandra to shut down when things hurt isn't protection, it's prison. She was right. Of course she was right. But knowing something intellectually and accepting it emotionally are different battles entirely. I don't know how to do this, I said. How to let people in. How to read that book without breaking. How to be the father Cassandra deserves when I'm barely holding myself together. You start small, Janet said. 1 page, 1 conversation, 1 moment of not running away. And you let people help you. Because isolation isn't strength, Chris. It's just loneliness in disguise. We sat in silence for a while. Not uncomfortable, just present. The books, I said eventually. All those notes. That was you keeping a promise to someone you barely knew. It was me trying to honor someone who loved deeply enough to plan for her own absence. Sarah was preparing Cassandra, yes, but she was also preparing you. She knew you'd struggle. She knew you'd isolate, and she tried to leave safeguards. I was just one of them. The next day, I made a decision, a small one. Instead of checking the window before leaving for work, I walked out at my normal time, didn't adjust, didn't calculate, just existed. Janet was in her garden. She looked up, smiled. Morning, Chris. Morning, Janet. 3 words. 3 years in the making, but they felt like a beginning. That weekend we read the Starkeeper's daughter, together, all three of us. Me, Cassandra, and Janet. I managed 4 pages before I had to stop, throat tight, eyes burning. But instead of running to the bathroom to hide, I just sat there, let the tears come. Let Cassandra see that missing her mother was okay, that feeling things was allowed. Janet picked up where I left off, her voice different from Sarah's. Not better or worse, just different. And somehow, that difference made it possible, because she wasn't trying to be Sarah. She was just trying to be present. Dad, Cassandra asked later that night, is it okay that I like when Miss Janet reads? Yes, sweetheart, it's very okay. I miss Mom. I miss her too. But I like Miss Janet too. Both things can be true. Out of the mouths of 8-year-olds comes the wisdom we spend years trying to learn. Yes, baby, both things can absolutely be true. Over the next months, something shifted. The minefield became a neighborhood again. The 20-minute detour became a normal route. The window check stopped. Janet, and I fell into an easy rhythm. Coffee on Saturday mornings. Shared dinners on Wednesdays. Cassandra's reading project not just completed but exceeded. 23 journal entries when she only needed 20. We didn't talk about what we were building, didn't label it, because sometimes naming things too early kills them. So we just existed, together but not pressured, present but not demanding. And slowly, I realized something. Hearts don't replace. They expand. There's room for grief and joy. Room for memory and new connection. Room for Sarah's love and Janet's friendship. I still miss Sarah. Still had moments where the loss hit like a freight train. But now, instead of facing those moments alone, I had someone who understood. Someone who didn't try to fix it or minimize it. Someone who just sat with me in the darkness and waited for light. A year later, Thanksgiving, 3 plates on the table. Turkey that Janet and Cassandra cooked while I was on shift. Stuffing made from Sarah's recipe that I'd finally been able to share. Pie from the bakery downtown, because none of us can bake worth a damn, and that's okay. We held hands, said grace. Cassandra led it. Thank you for Dad. Thank you for Miss Janet. Thank you for Mom, even though she's not here, because she loved us enough to make sure we'd be okay. And thank you for second chances. Out of the mouths of 9-year-olds. After dinner, we did what had become our routine. Reading time. The Starkeeper's daughter had been finished months ago, but we'd moved on to the sequel, then the whole series. Books that Sarah never got to read with Cassandra. New stories. New memories. I read 3 chapters that night. No tears. No throat closing. Just the simple joy of sharing something I love with people I cared about. When Cassandra finally fell asleep, Janet and I sat on the porch. Different season from that first conversation. Different people in many ways. Can I tell you something? I asked, always, a year ago, if someone had told me I'd be here, sitting with you, laughing with you, building a life that includes you, I would have said they were crazy, that it was impossible, that it dishonored Sarah's memory. And now I think Sarah knew exactly what she was doing. She found the person who could help us survive her absence, not replace her, not erase her, just help us keep living. Janet smiled. She was smart. And I was an idiot for fighting it so long. You were grieving. There's a difference. I pulled something from my pocket, a small box, opened it. Inside, a key to my house. I know we haven't talked about what this is. I said, what we're building. And I'm not trying to rush or label or pressure, but I want you to have this. Because you're not a neighbor anymore, Janet. You're family, and family is keys. She took it, held it like it weighed more than metal. Chris, you don't have to use it today or tomorrow or ever if you don't want to. But I want you to have it because I'm done running, done avoiding, done pretending that isolation is protection. You taught me that hearts expand. So I'm making room, deliberately, intentionally, with eyes wide open. Janet kissed my cheek. Sarah would be proud of you. I hope so, because I'm finally starting to be proud of me too. We sat there until midnight, talking about everything and nothing, making plans for Christmas, discussing Cassandra's school project, living in the present while honoring the past. And when I walked home, 3 houses down, not a 20-minute detour, I realized something profound. The geometry of avoidance had been replaced with the architecture of connection. The minefield had become a garden. The stranger had become essential. I checked on Cassandra, asleep with the Starkeeper's daughter on her nightstand, growing up healthy and loved, and learning that loss doesn't mean the end of joy. On my own nightstand, a photo of Sarah, smiling, beautiful, gone but not erased. I picked it up, traced her face with my finger. Thank you, I whispered, for loving us enough to plan for your absence, for finding Janet, for teaching me that moving forward isn't moving away from you. I like to think she heard it, that somewhere in whatever comes after, she was smiling, knowing her plan had worked, knowing her family was going to be okay. The next morning, I didn't check the window, didn't calculate departure times, just walked out at 6:05 like a normal person living a normal life. Janet was in her garden, auburn hair catching the light. But this time, instead of pain, I felt gratitude, because that hair wasn't a cruel reminder anymore. It was a bridge Sarah had built, a connection she'd orchestrated, a gift she left behind. Morning, Chris. Morning, Janet. Coffee at mine this Saturday. I'll bring the pastries. It's a date. Simple words, simple moment, but built on a foundation of shared grief, hard-won trust, and the understanding that love doesn't diminish when you make room for more of it. Cassandra's literacy project ended with an A+, but more importantly, it ended with a daughter who knew her father could be trusted to show up, who understood that feeling things was strength, not weakness, who learned that families can expand to hold the people who show up when you need them. As for me, I learned that the person who causes you the most initial discomfort might actually be the key to your survival. That grief is not a problem to solve, but a reality to integrate. That hearts truly do expand to hold both memory and new connection. 3 years of avoidance, 1 emergency, infinite chances to do better. I chose better, and better chose me right back. So here's the real question. Did you subscribe yet? Thousands of people will listen to this story and won't subscribe. Please don't be that person. Kindly support what I do here by subscribing. And then drop in the comment section if you like part 2 of Chris, Janet, and Cassandra's story. What challenges will they face as their blended family grows? How will they navigate the holidays together? What happens when Janet faces her own crisis? Let me know if you want to hear more.